Hello boys and girls, welcome back to PCM Sunday School. Let's continue with our missionary story, Charles Dance. Are you ready? Here we go. After being missionaries in China for 10 years, it was time for them to return home to see their families and friends. Even when the babies were being born, Priscilla and Charles did not go down to the coast for the births because it would mean leaving the work for too long. Now, after 10 long years, God was guiding them to return home. It was a sad day when they had to leave a big group of people who had become Christians through hearing them teaching the gospel. Came with them to the next village. On their way to the coast, it was hard to say goodbye to these people they had grown to love so much. Well, the journey to Shanghai was for young children was not easy. Part of the journey was made by sedan chairs carried by mules. Another part was by cargo boat on the river, trying to sleep on the boxes, which were not all on the same level. China was at war with Japan at that time, and the Chinese thought that they were Japanese, or at least friends of the Japanese. So whenever the boat stopped at one of the landing places, crowds they just gathered to see the ones they called foreign devils. Yes, but the Lord kept them safe from harm on the dangerous journey. Then came the long trip back to England by ship. The crew, they had a small band which played for the passengers, and the stud girls, they loved to listen to music. I also love to listen to music, don't you boys and girls? Okay, about the third day, they came back to the parents to say, we did not understand these missionaries at all, for they only play music and they never sing hymns or pray. In their life in the interior of China, they had never seen any white man or woman who was not a missionary. Well, when they got home, they stayed at the home of Grandma Stud. Yes, both Charles and Priscilla were worn out by the time, by the sickness, by the journey in China, the long hours of hard work and lack of good food. Yeah, both of them fell sick. They four girls like very much staying with their grandmom. How many of you love staying with your grandparents? Do you? Yes, these four girls also loved staying with their grandmother. They enjoyed the good food, they went to school and they made new friends. Yes, they went for walks in beautiful English countryside. Yes, and everything looks so different from China, especially the food out there. And the family lived most of the time on rice. If you meet a missionary family home for a rest in your country, are you kind to the children? Do you try to be friendly and talk to them? Do you, boys and girls? It meant a lot to the stud girls to be made welcome. When they came to England, Charles slowly got well again and was soon speaking in many churches and visiting the churches and visiting friends, and there were friends who had prayed for them. But Priscilla, on the other hand, she remained very weak. They did not see much hope of a return to China. The Lord had something else for them, and This time it's wonderful to know that God's promises to be with us when we do His will and depend on Him. Yes, and the news had crossed the Atlantic about the Cambridge 7. Do you remember the Cambridge 7? Yes, boys and girls. So Charles' older brother, his name was Nathan, had gone to USA and had shared the news about a work. And then a work began in the universities, and two students, they decided to start the student volunteer movement to encourage more Christian students to go out as missionaries. And so Charles was invited to come. It meant leaving his family at home and making a long journey by ship to USA. It meant traveling from place to place and then meetings after meetings. It meant spending a lot of time in personal talks with individual students. So Charles accepted it because it was what the Lord wanted him to do. The Lord was with him and He helped him during 18 months he spent in the USA. Speaking at meetings, hundreds of students, they came to Christ, and many, they just gave their lives to go to the mission field if that was His will. Because God, He guided Charles Studd to do that, it does not mean that we today should do exactly the same. It would not be right for a missionary to stay away from his family for such a long time today. We must remember that it was difficult to travel back then because there were no planes. It was not an easy time for his wife Priscilla at home. She was very often ill and she was lonely. She had to bring up the girls without the help of Charles, and she would have preferred speaking in meetings like Charles, but she had to learn to be patient. And then the Lord gave Charles another work to do. From 1900 to 1996, the family went to live in South India, where Charles was pastor of a church. There were two things that led him to take on this work. First of all, it was the last wish of his father before he died, and secondly, it was also the great desire of Charles' brother. His name was George. Both his father and his brother had farms in India at different places. However, during their time, they had not been witnessed for the Lord Jesus Christ in those days to the Indian people. So they felt that one of the Studd family should put that right and go there as missionaries. So Charles was one to go, and of course his wife and daughters went with him. The church was for the English-speaking people from the area. There were many army officers and British soldiers stationed over there, and it was a special 6th year when the family could be together. What they did was they could invite people to come to their house, and dad could play with the girls. There are many interesting places to visit and things to do. Their great desire was to see others to come to Christ. So God, He answered their prayers. Now, one man became a Christian. He was a chief clerk in a local military officers. He had not opened his Bible for 23 years. His little son, he persuaded him to go to church. He said, "You must come and hear Mr. Studd. He talks about bread and butter in the pulpit." So Charles, he had used the story about this to show how the Lord meets everyday needs. The father, then he went and kept going back. Then he wrote to Charles Studd, each Sunday at church I get hit harder. This last week I felt I had to make a decision. There was a big fight between God and me and the devil, and thank God he won. There was such a change in his life that the Indian boy who worked for him said, "What happened to this master? He was always taking plenty sweet words. Now he's only doing plenty of church work." This Indian boy noticed the difference and came with the others to the family. And they went for the Bible reading time, they went for the family prayer time, which the man started at his house. Do others see that you are a Christian? That your life makes a difference? Do others see that in you, boys and girls? That's the question. I leave it to you. Now coming back. All this time, Charles was struggling with asthma. You know, asthma is a disease that makes a person very difficult to breathe. He hardly ever could sleep between 2 a.m. in the morning till 4 a.m. in the morning because of coughing continuously. However, there were other joys because all 4 of the daughters, they trusted Jesus while they were in India. Later, when the Studd family went back to England, God provided through a friend for them to attend good boarding schools in England and Switzerland. Charles Studd wrote to a friend about them. "It is a great joy to see all my girls right out on the Lord's side. For that alone I feel I owe the blessed Savior every drop of blood and affection in body and heart." So God promises to be with us and to help us when we do His will and depend on Him. Was preparing Charles Studd for his great work, for all the family had returned to England from India. Charles was having meetings in different parts of the country. One day, after meeting in Liverpool, his attention was caught by a notice. Yes, and it touched his sense of humor because the notice, it read like this: "Cannibals want missionaries." Yes, it wasn't, of course, that cannibals wanted missionaries to go there so they could eat them. Rather, that missionaries were needed to preach the gospel. Yes, so Charles Studd decided to find out more about this strange notice. And the notice was to advertise a missionary meeting. So Charles went there and heard a Christian man. He was actually sharing the need in the center of Africa. He said explorers have been there and big game hunters, traders and officials, but no Christians had gone to these tribes to tell them about Jesus. As Charles thought to himself, why have no Christians gone? It was as if God said to him, "Charles, why don't you go?" Yes, God was speaking to Charles. And then immediately Charles replied, "The doctors won't allow it." The answer came, "I am the God who heals you. Don't you trust me? I will go with you and keep you there where no excuses left." He knew he had to go. The only question was, how? Because he had no money. At 50 years of age and after 15 years of ill health, he could ever face the heat and climate, the disease and the difficulties in the heart of Africa. So Charles, he knew God wanted him to go. He shared with a group of men who decided to they decided to form a committee to help him. But they had one condition, that he should be examined by a doctor to see if he was fit to go. And then what happened, boys and girls? The doctor's answer was no. How sad. So the committee said no to Charles. His answer to committee was this. Charles said, "Gentlemen, God has called me to go, and I will go. I will blaze the trail through my grave and only become a stepping stone for that younger man, so that younger men may follow." He was ready to go and preach the gospel in the center of Africa, even if it meant he would die there. Other missionaries would go to take up the work. Boys and girls, maybe you are making excuses to God that you're not able to serve Him. Perhaps you're saying, "I'm not strong enough or clever enough to be a missionary one day, or I'm too busy to do all those things for God, or I'm not good enough to work for God." The Lord is able to give you the strength and to help you to do what He wants you to do, because He promises, "Lo, I am with you always." It says in Matthew 28:20. And the Bible also says, "Whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel will save it," in Mark 8:35. So boys and girls, next time we're going to learn how God worked things out for Charles. Are you counting on God, who can do what seems impossible to man? Yes, He is still able to do it today if we are willing to do His will. So see you soon with the last part of Charles' start. Stay blessed, and it's bye from Miss Susan.